Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome to your first video for Tuesday, where I'm wearing exactly the same as I did yesterday. That's because there's a lot of stuff that I needed to cover, and this is one of these videos that unfortunately I just didn't get around enough time to kind of like talk about. But we're going to be talking about the Red Skull buff. Very interesting changing things. Now, I'm not sure if Aunt May, link in the description to Aunt May, whether or not this is the buff abilities or not. I'm not. I think actually it might be the new abilities. Definitely looks like that's the case. But look, maybe we'll just go straight into the game side of things just to double check, because it is available. By the way, I would say when the champion goes live, pairing it with a Hulkbuster relic is something I advise. The reason I've got that particular relic as my go-to relic is due to the fact of shock vulnerability improvements. Now, on the very low end of the rank up, you're able to get a good amount of shock vulnerability, which is the potency of shocks by 2.31%. Of course, the kind of further you take a relic, the more potency it's going to get. We got as well, the rune is shock repulsors. But to be honest, because Red Skull does have power control abilities, it can be relatively effective to look at switching to other ones. Like you could say, okay, well, Hulk inhibitor, when you have 3+ shock effects on the opponent, inflict a suppression passive, lowering combat power. It does apply in this situation because the champion has got what he's got. But also shock debuff potency up 1.51%. So yeah, again, that just kind of like gives you, an idea. You could use this one with Red Skull, which I do recommend. So what the champion is for me is a heal blocker, which says right there, power control option, powerful shock damage, and rotation around this. I like to do SP2 close to SP1, throw the SP2, then throw the SP1. I rock the champion with Suicide Masteries. It doesn't feel like it's a sustainable element to just SP3 rotate, and that's just something I've found. Especially because the SP3 drain 100% of the opponent's power for every 10% of max power drained this way, gain an armor up buff, which can be quite helpful because it does play into the champion's overwhelming presence, which for each armor up buff, Red Skull gains the following bonuses: attack rating, critical resistance, energy resistance, and minus 10% opponent stun ability. Now it's up to you if you kind of feel that with Suicide Masteries you're SP3 rotating and that's a sustainable element of building armor ups to then doing damage. For me personally, I just didn't feel it. I'm using Suicide Masteries in some of the footage you're going to see in a moment. So let's roll some of that footage and I'll talk you through some of the initial damage potential when it comes to shocks and showcasing that. Then we'll take a look at heal blocking, and then we're going to look at power control. So first of all, right off the bat, we've got to go in for the quintessential Winter Soldier fight. As you can see, Suicide Masteries is what I'm using at the moment. And the plan was indeed to do that SP2 close to SP3. So throwing SP2, then SP1. Why? SP2 launches a really nice shock damage, and the SP1 basically keeps it in place. It pauses the particular shock. So off the SP1, the first hit pauses all shock debuffs on the opponent for 6 seconds, which allows for that just improvement. So you're going to see it like now. There's the striker, and then we've got the shock debuff on. And then we're going to throw an SP1 to basically pause it in place. So we're pausing that shock in place, which means that you look at all that shock damage, it is shockingly good. And then what I'm going to do again is build up. Now I could at this point hold my heavy attack down to build up to an SP1 again, but I'm feeling that that's kind of like maybe better just kind of like just do that. We pause the shocks in place, we do the damage, 61 hit, and done. We now move on to heal blocking. So as you can see right here, doing a heavy attack does a heal block, and as well, great amount of damage means that we're able to do a substantial amount. Again, just to kind of showcase that, heavy attack goes in, heal blocks in place. As an option, as a heal block option, that does a good amount of damage. It is fantastic, really rate it as a heal blocking option and having it as an additional. Is it a case like it's similar to a lot of other champions? Yes. Is it a champion that if you're able to get armor ups, you're able to power control quite effectively? Of course. We're going to see that in one bit of footage which we're going to repeat. So this Cyclops fight right here, there's Power Flood. So this is a Power Flood example, all or nothing as well. and we're power draining. We're kind of keeping power at bay by our block being hit. By our block being hit, we're able to power control. Similar thing with this, like obviously I would do heavy attack in order to hold down my heavy attack in order to, well, hold my block in this particular node. But you can see the power suppression potential is there, and it's just, again, just like another option of power controlling, which is very, very effective, which we're just doing loads of power draining. Again, we'll try and highlight certain things, like more so with the power drain side of things. Like from a power drain perspective, hitting that block, yes, does a little bit of damage back at the enemy, which I think is a bit of a power burny type thing. It's direct damage for each armor up on Red Skull, which helps out massively to kind of just power control really, really effectively. And especially for situations like this, especially for situations where literally buffs could power up the enemy on a node. So there's tons of options and interest when it comes to this particular champion. So I really do rate like the buff that Kabam have done to this champion and added in just more, I'd say, easy to access power control, easy to access damage rotation. Like for me, as I said, like it's up to you how you want to rotate with this champion. For me, I feel it's very much a case of building up to close to 3 special attack power bars. Why? SP2 gets thrown. On activation, gain an unstoppable buff for 2 seconds, plus 2 seconds for every armor up. That's kind of helpful if you want to then kind of rubber band into doing another 5-hit combo. But I personally feel that like that's not what I'm really kind of focusing on this one. My main thing is all about throwing the SP2 first off, close to an SP1. And a striker launch. So I would say it would be best to close to SP3, and then launch a striker. Then, if you've got the Hulkbuster on, you're throwing the SP2, you're doing a good amount of shock damage. A little bit more with that striker, that relic on board. And then it's a case of just then putting on an SP1 to then prolong the shocks, which is each hit inflicts a shock debuff dealing X amount of energy damage over 6 seconds, plus 1 second per armor up buff on Red Skull. So try and get armor ups on... I wasn't really concentrating too much on that. Maybe it's a case I should have concentrated a bit more on building those armor ups, but to be honest, it wasn't something I was overly looking at, and it was just a case of like as soon as I've done that SP2, SP1 kind of rotation, and then tried to put in another SP1, whether or not I built my power by quite simply holding down for my heavy attack, which is somewhere here, isn't it? Like where I'm able to build power. It's somewhere here. There it is. It's a signature ability. On a signature ability, while charging heavy attack, generate X amount of power. So yeah, and every 10th hit, basic attacks grant Red Skull 1 armor up buff. So I think that really helps out with that signature ability. You're quick building, you're getting to the armor up, you're then able to do that SP2, striker throne, SP1 to keep the shock zone kind of rotation, and it works. We've seen the footage. It works. It's fun. I don't think there's anything more to say on that. I wanted to make a quick video on this particular champion and go, I think it's good. It's a good little improvement, and it's an easy to use like rework. It's not, I'm not saying like Iron Man was complicated in any way, but there's certain things I didn't like about Iron Man. This is a very easy to use rework and buff, and that's really it. That's for the video. What are your thoughts on this particular champion? Are you going to rank him up for that particular element? I think that this would be, do you know what I think? I think this would be a very good champion for a Battlegrounds node counter. Not season 12. Maybe obviously the other ones have gone, but maybe a future one where, like, you know, an armor buff is going to be very important. Defense wise, yeah, difficult to say. I'd say no, except for the Red Skull is immune to nullify, fate seal, and stagger effects from champions. Could be quite an effective kind of like change and alteration. But yeah, against mutants, Red Skull's ability actually cannot be modified. So there's some definite positives with this champion. And yeah, thoughts in the comment section about this one. Check out some other content located on the screen. I had a bit of a blast playing this champion. I really do recommend it. It's runtime for my throat to go a bit funky. Yeah, thank you everybody for watching this video. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.